When trout get on zooplankton, fishing can be challenging. Zooplankton are tiny. They come in lots of different colors. Who wants to tie size 96 flies? I don't, and I won't. But what I do is I use fly patterns such as small microleeches that are the same color as the zooplankton the trout are fixated on. And my Daphnia Leech has worked really well for me when they're focused on bright green or Chartreuse zooplankton. It's worked really good for me. I hope it works just as well for you. So let's tie the Daphnia Leech. Into the vise, I've placed a Daiichi 4647 number 12. You could also tie these in a size 10, and you could also use them on a 4640 bronze finish hook as well. I've slid on a 7/64 tungsten head turner bead, and you'll notice I've got the concave side of the bead facing the hook eye. This is going to push the mass of the bead out in front of the hook eye. When you attach the fly to your leader using a clinch knot that secures tight against the hook eye, this is going to encourage the fly to suspend horizontally. For the tying thread, we are going to use some of the Semperfli Classic Waxed in 12/0. I'm going to tie it in right behind the tungsten head turner bead. And then I just use the thread to push the bead tight up against the hook eye, get it in place, and then trim away our excess. Then we're going to cover the shank with tying thread to provide a good thread base traction for the materials. Secure the thread right down the shank about halfway between the point and the crushed down barb, and then using big open turns, take the thread back up near the rear of the bead. For the tail, we're going to use the flue from the base of a barred Schlappen feather, in this case olive black. This provides a good color contrast to the fly. So we're going to select a feather. I'm going to use this middle section of the feather right here for the tail. Where it falls off, I'm just going to strip that away. I'm going to strip off the section right here where you have the marabou-like fibers. This is one of my favorite tailing materials for small microleech type flies. I find the fiber is finer. Basically, it's already measured to length. Whereas if you use marabou, longer feather, and perhaps a little thicker, I like to keep the tail fibers intact. I don't like to tear them to length. These are ready to go. We're going to tie these in so the tail extends the length of the shank. So basically from the bead to the bend of the hook is the right proportions for the tail. I'm going to transfer that measurement to the rear of the hook, slide my fingers back to where the thread is hanging, and then going to remove all of the curlicues where the fibers were attached to the stem. Then I am going to come in with a soft wrap followed by another soft wrap, then start winding the thread back. You'll notice that I haven't let go of the materials yet. I'm holding them in place with my thumb and forefinger, lifting up slightly on the fibers as I secure them back. This keeps them on top of the hook shank so they won't twist or roll. Secure them back about halfway between the hook point and the crushed down barb. If you have any errant fibers at the tip of the tail, go ahead and remove them. I now have a short, neat, little gathered tail. For a little accent in the tail, I'm going to use some ice blue pearl crystal flash. I'm going to advance the thread forward and tie in a single strand on the near side of the hook using a couple of wraps. Make sure you have roughly the same amount of crystal flash on either side of the tie-in point. I'm going to take the strand behind the tie-in point and secure it back along the shank to the base of the tail. Then I'm going to come back up to the original tie-in point, take the other strand forward of the tie-in point, fold it over and along the far side of the shank, and secure it back to the base of the tail like I did with the first strand. So basically, my flash is sandwiching the tail. Trim the ends of the flash slightly past the tips of the Schlappen flue, so I have a little bit of a flash tail. Just a subtle bit of flash to help draw fish in. For the body material, we're going to use some leaf green straggle string. I use the leaf green because it approximates the color of the olive-based zooplankton or Daphnia this fly is going to represent. Daphnia or water fleas are actually a species of zooplankton. Secure the straggle string along the shank from the base of the tail forward to the bead. Take the tying thread right up to the rear of the bead. Make sure the bead is positioned properly. Take the straggle string and start forming the body by winding it forward using close touching turns, sweeping the fibers back as we wrap, almost as you would if you were winding a little hackle. Make sure you don't see any gaps between the wraps. It's entirely leaf green. Once again, we are just approximating the color of the zooplankton the trout are focusing on with this green version. You could also tie this Daphnia leech in an orange or reddish pink variation to match other zooplankton colors. Trim away the excess straggle string. I now pull down the tying thread and coat it with a little brushable superglue. Use the thread to carry the superglue behind the bead and into the tie-off point to make sure it is nice and secure. For a little added security, I'm just going to place a 3 to 5 turn whip finish directly behind the bead to complete my Daphnia leech. My Daphnia leech is a very simple fly, deadly under an indicator. Remember to use a clinch knot to take advantage of the tungsten head turner's ability to help balance your fly. Don't be afraid to cast and strip this fly as well. I had really good luck with this fly this past fall, fishing it in a washing line setup using a midge-tip line. I had a tequila fab on the point, and about 5 feet in front of it, I had this fly hanging off a dropper with just a lawn slip loop knot, or you could also use a clinch knot, using a steady hand twist or choppy strip retrieve 3 to 4 inch pulls. The takes were aggressive. So not only do they take this as a Daphnia imitation, but maybe they take it for a damsel nymph too. Who knows? They like it, they eat it, so add a few to your fly box.